Hey everyone, and welcome back to the 10 Key Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Dan Anchetta, and I'm here today with Ramsey Brown and Matt Larrabure. And I wanted to say thanks for being here. And if you haven't already, please do like and subscribe to the channel on any of the places that you're listening to the podcast or watching on YouTube. We're getting those things rolling, so really appreciate as we're growing our follower and listener base if you would be an early adopter and jump on board and get involved in the show. So guys, we're back. Nice to see your faces.
Yeah. Been a couple of weeks.
Yeah. And we have an interesting topic today, kind of, talking offline about show prep. And one of the topics that came up was like this idea of mentorship in the business world. So I think Ramsey, it was kind of your idea that you came up with. You had good mentors or other people that are running businesses that weren't so successful that you learned from, and kind of a combination of like, who are you surrounding yourself with and what you learn from those folks.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we were talking about just, early on in the career and, I sit next to, I'm moving offices, but I still work with somebody who was very instrumental in my growth early on in my career. And so it wasn't anything super explicit, but I made a conscious kind of decision to really try and draw out from her and learn from her. And, my decision early on to do that and then continue to do that through my career was, really instrumental in my personal career growth. And I mean, you can take lessons from all parts of life, as I grew and I started dealing more with true business owners, the wealth of knowledge there, if you are conscious about trying to
So some of these arrangements are like formal, some of them are informal, some of them are kind of like explicit things that you discuss with them, like, hey, you're going to mentor me, and I'm going to be your mentee, and other
like a regular weekly check-in or something like that, very structured.
It's like kind of more like coaching, right?
Yeah.
I've paid for coaching, like I have a coach and like pay monthly for them to coach me, but there's different ranges or different like agreements, right? So maybe talk a little bit about like that arrangement that you have with that person. Do they know that they're a mentor to you, like formally?
Not really. I mean, especially not back then. I mean,
sure.
We worked really closely together. This was when I was an analyst, so I was kind of the very entry level, kind of in the commercial lending world, and she was an experienced lender, and she managed a very large portfolio for the bank, and so she had large clients and important clients. And so just, me, I was coming out of my MBA at the time. And so I kind of had that school hat on. So I was like, okay, well, day one here, like continue the learning. And so that was really pretty informal, but because of, we worked together on pretty much every deal that she did, I had a lot of access. And so that wasn't anything really formal, but I had the access. And I was in there doing it. So it was really more just in my head, like, okay, I need to take advantage of this time.
Right.
I think you said something, having the access, that's so huge. You have that person there that's available to say, oh, I can go into their office, I can sit down and talk with them, and they'll give you that time. And it's a genuine, they want to help you grow, whether it's business or life, but they'll give you that time, which is so awesome to find that person that will do that.
Yeah, because especially like, if you're not working directly with somebody that has that knowledge that you really want, that's where you kind of almost have to get a little bit formal with it, because you want to be like, look, I want to learn from you, and I know your time is valuable. So like, what can you agree to? And I'll make sure that I'm taking advantage of your time so that I'm not wasting your time, and make something a little bit more formal. Because I mean, personally growing your skill set, I mean, as a young adult, the advantage that you can gain from having access, or forcing access, not forcing, but
but that's why you like take that
access.
Crappy job with low pay. It's not like you take that job because you're going to get access to people who are going to make you better, improve your skill set, and like set you up for success in the long run, right? Like that's why you take that entry level job, even though you probably could have taken a different job and made more money up front. Like that apprenticeship type of idea, right?
Yeah.
So it's really interesting that there was no like formal agreement, but you just kind of migrated into it. It just kind of evolved over time. And I wonder how many like mentors or people who have influenced you can think of that like never received like financial compensation for their time, but there's something rewarding in it for them to like share their knowledge and expertise with someone who's eager to learn and is going to like kind of help like respect the craft of whatever it is they're doing with the art part of what they do.
Yeah.
Right?
Knowing that you're absolutely not the smartest guy in the room, and just being very, conscious about that and be willing to accept any knowledge that you can get. Cause I got very lucky through my career. I had several mentors along the way that, based on my position, I was working pretty directly under them, and they were experienced people, and I tried my best to take advantage of that. And that actually led to some of my growth career-wise, because, basically they talked to their peers and basically said, he's willing to get in, do the work, and will figure out the why behind things. And then he will take that and internalize that knowledge so that next time, like, he's faster with it, or,
Sure.
he knows the questions to ask.
It's probably also evolved into other career opportunities as those people maybe moved to different companies or like did other things. And then they're like, I know the perfect guy for this job, or right. Like that happens over time. It's great for your skill set. It's also really amazing for your future career prospects and like your network.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Most industries are pretty small. Like, when it comes down
Super
to
small.
it. I mean, if you're in it for, 5+ years, like you start to know players in a lot of places, because people move, people change careers.
People talking, it goes back to, like an idea of burning bridges or don't burn bridges on your way out type of stuff, because like you said, it's a small industry. All the little micro industries, everybody talks, everybody knows each other. They run in the same circles.
Yeah, it is usually 1 or 2 degrees of separation from pretty much
100%.
everybody.
Yeah. One thing that kind of popped in my head is changing now from work from home, very much more working from home, starting out a new job and it's 100% remote. You don't have that same level of opportunity to work with in an office space, you're sitting next to somebody or the office down the hall to be that mentor, because you don't really know anybody, yet you still could do the video calls, but it's
not the same.
The organic development of it is,
Yeah.
I could see that being a limiting factor, that aspect of it, the start of it, unless it's a formal setup, which I think so many times, like you said, and for me, the same kind of thing. It's not a formal, hey, we're going to meet and you're going to be my mentor. I'm asking you to be my mentor and we're going to talk every week at this time, that does happen obviously, but that's probably the rarer side. And I'd just be curious how much that is not happening. Yeah. I think, it's a little bit more anecdotal.
I deal with CPAs fairly often in my career life, and it's a very, I've talked to several of them about this, and they say, some of the firms are reasonable size. So they have kind of classes of people that come in that graduate.
Like cohorts that come through that recent graduates.
So the class of 2019 and 2020, like that were really heavily impacted by COVID very early on, because they all went remote really early on. And even 2021 to a certain degree, they're really saying that like those young CPAs are materially behind where they should be, a year and a half, 2 years later, because they were so remote. Like they just weren't around the people with the knowledge, and it really set them back in terms of skill set.
Makes
like very
sense.
Noticeably compared to prior years.
Yeah. One thing that you mentioned earlier, I wanted to go back to, and like the real life example is like having the humility and being okay with knowing that you don't know everything, and then surrounding yourself with people who know a little bit more than you do, right? So, and we'll name drop here because she won't mind I'm talking about her. So Aaliyah Hansen, who works for me, changed industries during the pandemic because she worked in like high-end events and weddings and that sort of thing, which just completely shut down, right? And so I was like, hey, come check out this whole mortgage thing that I'm doing and check it out. And she sat in my office and pulled up a chair and started taking notes and started listening. And then I'd get off a phone call and she'd say, how did that, like, why did you say that? Help me understand why this, fast forward three years later, she's one of the best lenders hands down. She's exceeded. She knows everything. She's learned so much, but she was humble enough, even though she was very accomplished in her career, her prior career, to sit in my office and take notes and ask questions for years and like pay her dues and make a little bit of money, but not crazy money, and master the craft by having that like mentor, right? And that was kind of formal, but kind of informal. She's a close friend, and she, I was like, hey, I think you'd be really good at this. And then she just kind of kept showing up. And now, she went after like a week, she's like, you should probably hire me and I should probably get my license. And I was like, that's a great idea. I'm all for it. And then, now she's, between me and her, one of us is the kind of top performer in the group. And, sometimes she totally kicks my butt in production in a month. And it's just like, I'm so proud of watching that progression over time. And she'll still come to me and be like, I don't know how to handle this. What do I do? And I haven't told her, but like I have those people that I go to that are up the chain, like, that have more experience. I go, I don't know how to do this. Like, how do I help me understand how I should handle this? Like, give me the expression is like, show me where the landmines are so I don't have to step on them myself. Right. Yeah. Like, and there's so many people out there that are willing to be like, there's a bunch of different paths that you can go down, but I'm going to tell you here, and here are things that are just going to blow you up. So don't go there, but otherwise kind of find your own path. I'm just going to keep you within on the lane, right? Yeah. It's so important and so powerful, and I pay none of them, right? Yeah. And it's totally different than like the coach that I have, which is a formal written contract where we do certain deliverables, we meet certain number of times, and we have objectives. A wonderful experience, but very different than that kind of ad hoc mentorship sounding board type of idea.
And I think it's very rare that if you go to somebody and say, can you help me with this? That they're going to say no. That they're going to say, no, go away, get out of my office. I don't want to talk to you, right? Because you're building them up, that they're the expert. And it feels good for somebody to come into you and say, hey, can you help me with this? Because you know something more than they do. And
as long as you progress, as long as you don't come back and ask the same questions over and over and over again, as long as you take it seriously, absorb the knowledge, apply it, try it out, and then move forward. 100%.
Yeah, because you can wear out that welcome if you're soaking up too much time, like you said, or just repeat questions.
Yeah, and I think it's okay to like come back to get reassurance or like confirm a concept or whatever. Have your work double checked, but at a certain point, like you have to progress through it and stop asking the basic questions and move more into like that higher level conversation, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's like, dude, I've already told you that 10 times. Right?
Yeah.
Right. Make a note. Take a video. You know, do a screen record of me doing this or something.
Yeah. Bring, record it on your phone.
100%.
And then go back to it. It's fine.
That's a rare occasion, but that's the caveat. That's happen. The asterisk. That like, don't overstep, but totally reach out to people. Yeah. I've had people reach out, randomly on Instagram, be like, "Hey, I've seen some of the content you make and videos you make. Can you help me?" Totally. Like, it's so flattering to get that call. That's awesome. How can I help? We'd meet a couple times and then they go do their own thing, which is great.
Yeah.
So anyway,
I like your comment about the landmines though. I mean, people that have been in it and done it, I mean, they've seen, for me, like in the lending business, like they've seen deals go sideways. Yep. So they've seen, the wheels fall off, and it's like, okay, well, here's some alarm bells that's going off in my head because I've seen something like that and it didn't go good.
There's 20 right ways to do this, and choose the right one of those 20. Here's 5 that never work, so don't do those 5. Right? Yeah. That's so valuable. Yeah. Like,
you can get the loan done, but you're going to be paying for it for years afterwards.
And especially if you understand in like our professions, even if you get the deal done, it's not necessarily a win. Right? There's like reputation risk. Like, if you have to play the politics a bit sometimes. You have to know like when to push, when not to push, when you have pushed too far and then the person that kind of has to go along with it like is resentful that you did that, and then you pay for it in the future. Like, there's a lot of nuance to business that's not just like, does it hit the ratio number? Does this thing, pencil out?
Recognizing if a deal or whatever it is a good deal for you or a bad deal, and it's okay and almost empowering to say, no, this is not a good deal. Because in the end, like you're saying, it's going to not turn out well. It's nobody's going to be happy in the long run for a variety of reasons.
Early career.
You're going to say yes to everything.
I mean, you'll deal with anybody.
Oh, yeah.
You're like, I'll take on any clients because I don't care if you're a mean, abusive
You're alive?
jerk.
Okay, great.
Right, exactly. Like, I just need clients at all.
Yeah.
And that experienced mentor will be like, I understand that you are hungry, that you want to do this, but I'm telling you that person's going to use and abuse you. Just don't do it, please. Yeah. It's very valuable. Helps you.
Saying no to that client might actually be worth 3 clients down the road.
Or more.
They're just going to soak up all your 100%. Time. They're super high maintenance, whatever else. Yeah.
Totally. So for you guys, like personal experience, Ramsey, you're kind of reflecting, I think, on who that person is. So, well, yeah. But any other like formal or even informal mentorship kind of people that you really learned a lot from that like stick out to you? You don't have to name drop, but like people who are like, this is a really great lesson or great example of like, and I kind of based a lot of my career growth off of what I learned from that person.
Oh, totally. And so I work with several other advisors and we're partners and we do a lot and share a lot. And I consider them mentors to me. I go in, when I started out, I was lowest on the totem pole. I didn't know what I was doing. And they would give the time. Say this, why did you do this? Or why did you say that way? Why are you doing this? Or how does this work? And getting that time that they would give. And then I soak it up. I write it down. I try to remember it and regurgitate what they say to other people in a similar situation. It was never really a formalized, but it was definitely there. And then there's also the personal side too of non-work mentors that are more life-driven, and this is how you treat people. And there's crossover there,
sure.
Work and personal, but then taking that same thought process and interpret it into work.
Yeah.
That, this is how you deal with people or life situations. Yeah. And then putting that into a work situation or a business situation, it's going to happen. It's going to cross over, and it's going to make you better in those work situations.
100%. Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. I think you guys both know my friend Cliff,
mm-hmm.
Who is a retired police officer, chief of police for Newark, California. Anyway,
of course I know Cliff. We share something very important.
Your birthday?
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. So shout out Cliff. But yeah, so like he never worked in business like I do, right? But I tell you, it's all kind of the same. A lot of like the people issues, the client issues, like the way you talk to people, the way you address them in stressful situations. Like we had so many deep conversations about like hostage negotiations and how they're similar to business negotiations.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it's like, okay, so this is not the standard, like business book or whatever I'm reading. It's not the standard take on it, but there's so much to learn from those conversations. So like, that's a great example of, a friend, mentor that turns like, okay, and I can go to him, go, hey, here's the situation. What do you think of this? How would you handle that? And you need to ask a couple of questions like, oh, have you thought about this? Maybe you approach this person, like who else are the stakeholders? And it's like, okay, great. Like helps give you that perspective. And a lot of time it's just a confirmation of something I already know. Mm-hmm. I know to be true, but having that person that you know, like, and trust to go, you're thinking right here, like trust your gut on that one, keep moving forward. That's like so valuable.
Yeah. So, have you ever read the book, Never Split the Difference?
Yes.
It just dropped in my head because of it's all about a hostage negotiation.
Yeah, I guess I said that, and that's not true because that's a very popular business book about negotiation.
But a lot of people don't.
FBI hostage negotiator. So
a lot of people don't know that book. Yeah. I've talked to a lot of people.
Yeah, Chris Voss, right, is the author.
Yeah, it's really good.
It's a great book.
I did the audiobook, and I was like, I like this, so then I bought it and read it.
I think I did the same, actually. I listened to the audiobook. Do you ever, it's a tangent here, but do you ever like listen to audiobooks and then like when you think of the book, you remember like exactly where you were and what you were doing at the time?
Yeah.
Like that book reminds me of during the pandemic, I was like pushing the stroller with our like young child who's now turned 4. Like she was a baby and like pushing her around, like going up and down the hills of West Petaluma, listening to that book. And I had that flashback just now of that moment. So thanks for that memory. So yeah, that's a great example of like that book is fantastic about how do you negotiate, like never split the difference, right? There's people that's a lot. Like if someone says, hey, and you're negotiating for a business loan and hey, I think the rate should be 7 and they're saying it's 6.5. Split the difference, go 6 3/4. Like never split the difference, right? Because people never walk. That means they're both walking away dissatisfied.
Yeah,
and that's what the whole book. Anyway, that was it's a good one.
Check it out.
Yeah, it's a good.
Have you read it, Ramsey?
I have not.
You'd like it.
I think I have a copy in the office. I'll hand it to you. Are you an audiobook listener or are you more of a book reader?
I should be more of an audio because I'm struggling with the kids and the other stuff. I struggle to get through books at the moment, but
I like pop an earbud in and can tear through a book in a couple of days.
I used to do it when I was commuting on the motorcycle, and I'd have to listen to a book like 2 or 3 times because, swerving from away from a car distracted the brain.
Yeah.
But I don't do any audiobooks now. Now I take the train 2 to 3 days, so I try to read on the train. So
look at you go.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Try.
That should be on your social more. Like, hey, here's a candid. You should set up your camera like on a timer, and then just read a book so you're not like holding the phone, and like have like a nice candid shot of you reading.
Falling asleep on the train while reading a book.
Fine.
Yeah,
no problem.
I might have set my alarm several times so I don't miss my stop on the way home. It's like I'm feeling kind of tired today.
It's like you're in Santa Rosa before you know it.
You're like, where am I? Petaluma looks a little different.
There you go. So back to the real subject here. I think so. There's a couple of ideas I had about, great to learn how to do things. Yeah. Also great to learn how not to do things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I've been involved in different types of businesses and worked with different types of clients where I go, the lesson here is not how to run a business or how to do the thing. It's how not to do it. This is a failure. Even though I'm like maybe working there, it's like, this is a failure of leadership. This is a failure of direction. This is a failure of whatever. And I can reflect back on those lessons learned and go, am I acting as a manager, as a business person like that person?
Yeah,
or those
the person
people
that I actively tried to lead.
Exactly.
Yeah, tried to leave the business.
And I didn't admire how they ran their business. Okay. And that's a good gut check for me as well to go, like, even if you work for like the crap, like everyone's got that crappy boss that they've ever worked for, right? Like, don't run away from that. Like, pay really close attention when you have a really bad boss or bad manager, so that when you have the opportunity to lead, that you go, am I acting like that person? And that's a really good, strong, like, gut check thing for you.
Yeah.
And then hopefully no one thinks of me when they're thinking of the crappy boss. I'm sure
we'll just check the comments after
That's
this.
Fine. Yeah, I know. Be like, I worked for Dan in 2010. No, just kidding.
Yeah. Well, I mean, everybody has like people they don't mesh with, right?
Sure.
I mean, it doesn't even have to be like, oh, you're a crappy boss. Like, you just don't see eye to eye as people.
Well, and I'm sure I was a crappy boss at a certain point. I mean, I got my first job in management at 23. I just graduated college. And I got a job offer, and when the hiring manager called me, I thought she was offering me like a teller job, because she was like, hey, I was working for a bank, and she's like, I have a job offer for you, but it's not the job that you applied for. And I literally said, I don't want to be a teller, because it was like a new accounts job. And she like laughed, and she was like, it's for the branch manager job. And I was like, okay, like, really? Me?
Yeah.
Wait, did you call the right person?
And seriously, and like, I was like, okay, like, yes, done. And I was quite effective, but I'm sure I was not a great manager at the time. Like, how could I be?
Yeah.
It's a thing that you learn with experience and through failure. So anyway.
Yeah, it's kind of fun because like managing people, I was a camp counselor for years, and then as a teenager, I was actually one of the directors for the camp. So like I had people working for me then, but since then, like, a lot of my career has been personal driven. So like I haven't had a lot of direct reports in over a decade. And so like that's an area personally, like I know I'll probably need to build some skill set over the next little year.
I think you'd be surprised, Ramsey, having worked with you before. So there's a difference between formal and informal leadership, right? So just because you have the title doesn't mean that you're the true leader. And oftentimes the person who doesn't have the title is actually the leader within the business unit. And I can tell you that is part of who you are. So I don't think that I wouldn't be, obviously some adjustment would be necessary for sure. But I think that your skill set is well developed for that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I know I have a tendency to attract like people to me, and that, that the skill sets that entails, but even that is a little different than like really like managing the day-to-day of a direct report. So there's a few skills.
Yeah, kind of.
But even that, just acknowledging personally that I have some skills that I need to work on and continue to draw out from my mentors and things like that.
I'd like to get your thoughts a little deeper on the whole work from home, like suggestions for people to find that mentor. I mean, and we all see it in different ways of different aspects of the working from home version. If somebody is fully remote, at a new company, how
this is
what are your
real to
thoughts
me.
on that,
I've had a lot of thoughts on it, and we're experiencing that right now because I have a largely remote team.
Yeah.
The hardest thing is to get ingrained in the culture if you don't come into the office, right? And so if you're remote because you're like live in a different state or whatever, it's really, really difficult for you to feel connected to the overall organization as much as those who do that, like physically come in and tell stories on Monday morning and hang out and the lunchroom and all the other stuff.
Yeah.
So the advice is really a combination of the things that we talked about already. Schedule regular one-on-ones with your direct manager. Take a personal interest in those people that you work with so that you're not just contacting them for task-oriented things, that you're connecting with them in an authentic, real way, even if you are remote. And then to find someone who's local in your market to be that mentor, to get face-to-face with and have lunch with.
So somebody outside of
someone outside the organization that can help fill the gap that you're going to lose by not physically being in your location.
Yeah.
I think the worst thing is what we talked about earlier. It's like you're locked in your apartment somewhere and you can't go outside and your only interaction is with people on Zoom or whatever. And it just is that must have been crippling for people because just such a lack of connection.
Yeah.
And it makes sense that people just then don't care about who they work for and they just change jobs because they're like, I have no connection to this. It's just a paycheck.
That's all.
And that's like kind of the worst thing for a manager.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's hard to overcome unless you really make that conscious effort
to be aware of it, to know that you're missing something, and like, to really take the time and invest the time to like meet your coworkers in an authentic way, especially like your direct manager and those in like your peer group. But you're still going to be missing out on that like informal mentorship.
Yeah. And
we learn a lot here, and it's the same thing in the banking office is hearing other people talk about their deals.
Yeah.
This is what I had. This is the thing I was working on. This is how I overcame it. This is what I was missing. This is what I picked up. For here, it's like a lot of guideline nuance. Like, hey, did you know that you could do X, Y, or Z? And we just like yell it out in the office, like, oh, that's cool. And then you remember that. And then you might not use it for 6 months. And then that deal comes around. You're like, hey, do you remember that you can, use this type of income, or you can.
I remember you talked about that deal that one time.
Exactly.
And
Tell me about that. It's like, let me go look up that email because I have it somewhere in my archive. And then it's like, oh, here it is. Yeah. And if you weren't here to hear that conversation, then you miss out on that whole opportunity and maybe you don't close that deal.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's the same thing in the banking world.
I mean, that was huge for me, developmentally, like when I was coming up as an analyst and other things, like just sitting in on like loan committee or any of the things like where those deep conversations were happening, and like literally I had no other purpose than to just be a fly on the wall and just absorb. And like the amount of knowledge you can absorb by literally being a fly on the wall, that is great for the skill set. But like you said, I mean, walking down the halls and popping your head in and just talking to people on a very real personal level that has nothing to do with work is so hard to do when you're fully remote. Like it's just hard to talk about, oh, my kid's soccer practice or whatever. When I'm walking out of the door, walking past the offices, oh, it's only 4:45. When you're rushing out of here? I was like, yeah, I'm going to my kid's soccer practice or whatever. And that doesn't happen if you're not there.
You just log off.
Yeah.
You just have a little out of office arrow on your Teams.
And there's that balance. I was thinking about there was a big shift years ago of getting rid of offices, right? Everybody's going to be in just this weird little pod thing and everybody's sharing a desk.
The open office concept?
Yeah. And it's like, okay, it's better for collaboration. And then that seems like it's going away and going back to the way it was or something different. And it's not one or the other. It's not just working from home and it's not just coming into the office. It's that combination and saying, okay, this works for this part and this works for that part. The work from home works great for a lot of people for a lot of reasons, but it also, working in the office, as we just reviewed, works great for a lot of reasons. And having your office is great so that you can have those private conversations, you can close your door, and then working outside with the office door open or in a cubicle situation that you're hearing other people, you can pick up on all that.
Yeah. I think for young people in particular, I mean, the whole working from home or remote, I mean, it's very appealing because you have a lot of freedom. And as a young person, you want that freedom. But it will hurt you in the long run if you don't, if you're not compensating to collect that knowledge that you would get from just sitting around talking to intelligent people in your office.
Yeah. I think for some people, the hybrid is really great. Like I know for one of my staff members specifically, she gets way more work done when she's at home by herself because she can just close the door. No one bugs her. She just focuses. That's like fits her personality type and kind of her drive. But she's also a self-starter, doesn't need to be managed, doesn't need a lot of oversight. So that's probably a relatively unique situation where like most other employees need to be around other people because they don't know how to do everything.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But she still comes in like 2 or 3 days a week because it's important that she's connected to the team and that she's here and that we're able to sit in her office. And I plopped a couch in her office so that we can all sit there and talk because she knows a lot. And, a lot of times there's difficult deals and we're like, it's easier for me to come sit in the office with you and look at the screen with you and go, oh, we forgot X, Y, or Z. Or, hey, remember that thing that we talked about 6 months ago? Hey, this is the time where that can apply and let's, salvage this loan or help this client out or whatever.
Yeah. And I think it's, it's important to note that person that's partially remote, I mean, she's entrenched in the industry. She's got knowledge.
Yeah.
As a young person.
Well, and I think that's important to also note her career track was like started as a receptionist, was the fly on the wall, didn't talk a whole lot, listened a bunch, absorbed, had a really, really great mentor that taught her everything, and she was willing to learn, absorb, and be humble, and now she's able to accelerate, and she's one of the best in the business at what she does.
The hybrid idea, I think makes a lot of sense. There's an office next to my office, and 80% of the time, there's one person in that office. And then all of a sudden, there's like 30 people in the office.
Right.
Every month, it seems like every month they're all together. They get together. They have a collaboration week or whatever, and then the rest they're remote.
Yeah.
I looked them up online, and it's like, oh yeah, they're all over the country, and then it's
cool,
part of their mission, and they write that,
Yeah.
and that's like, this is why we do that. We collaborate, and we make sure we do that, and it's just
they get together.
Changing of how we're looking at workspace.
That seems expensive though. You're paying for the space full time. It's not being utilized. You got to fly people in from all over the country.
I think if they were there the full time though, the space they would need would be double.
Sure.
Because they're working on couches or whatever. But
that was my first thought too. That
sounds expensive, man.
Inefficient in terms of use of space.
Yeah. It would be very interesting to see how that impacts like commercial real estate and a bunch of other things. Just like people need less space. Maybe you still have an office, a formal office, but you don't need 30 individual offices. You need 4. Yeah. People are rotating through different times and, kind of have a different schedule. So, kind of going back to the mentorship thing, one other concept, unless you have anything else, is this was shared with me some time ago from an old customer. And he was telling me about how he makes decisions. And he was saying that he has a board of directors in his head. And it's people who are in his life currently. It's people who he's known in his life, but maybe no longer alive. It's people who are, I think even one was like a character in a book, right? And like someone he really admired. And when he goes to make a decision, he like sits there and imagines them all sitting at a table, and he has this problem or issue or decision to make, and he'll ask each of them, like,
take it to his board.
What do you think? And it has like mental board of directors of like people who he really, really cared about and admired and thought highly of, and asking them like, what would you do in this situation? And he's like, if I'm stuck and I don't know, I will go ask the board. And the board, and then he like sits there and like closes his eyes and imagines them and like does this whole kind of visualization exercise. And that's how he makes his decision. Like that's really friggin' cool.
Yeah.
So I thought that was something cool to share that I learned, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, and I've been doing that a little bit. I probably should do that a little bit more when I have those hard decisions. Because a lot of the times, I mean, it's a self-reflection thing.
Yeah.
Right?
100%.
Like, it turns out those voices aren't real in your head.
What?
Yeah. And
that's what
they're going to confirm what you believe to be to know and to be true. But sometimes it's really difficult to make the right decision because it's hard.
Yes.
Right. But if you kind of have like that visualization of these other people, they're going to know what's right. They're going to tell you what to do, even if it's the difficult thing to do.
Yeah. Yeah. The right decision can often be the difficult decision.
Most usually is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pride
At
and
least
ego
in the
and
short
stuff,
term.
yeah.
But in the long term,
Oh, yeah, that's the thing.
like, that's the big difference. Like
Yeah.
short term, it might be a little bit harder or more difficult, but you look back at that, you're like, yep, that was the right,
totally right
way
decision.
better.
Yeah. Well, and that comes back to that in-office mentorship thing. Like, short term is that freedom of that remote job. Great. Yeah, it's fantastic. But, year 3, year 5, year 10, I mean, you're going to feel that lack of knowledge you didn't gather in those formative early years. You're going to be playing catch up for a while.
I think that's a problem that we have in business in general. And it's kind of our culture is thinking too short term, right? We're just thinking about next quarter's profits. We're thinking about the year-end reports. We're thinking about what do our balances and our loan volumes and stuff and our assets under management look like at this arbitrary cutoff period.
Got to have incremental growth.
Right. And then you
no
make silly
what.
decisions as that deadline approaches that you otherwise probably wouldn't make.
Yeah. Just to try and hit that hurdle.
To hit that hurdle.
Yeah.
Because you have to meet some type of expectation. Yeah. And in the future, as things evolve, I really hope that people are able to see, like, play the long game. Yeah. And that, pay your dues and play the long game, I think is maybe the takeaway for me from this whole kind of conversation.
Yeah. Absolutely.
What do you guys think? Any
Closing thoughts?
Yeah.
One last item popped in my head.
Yeah.
One of my mentors is always pushing for learning, more learning. And he's doing it himself. He's always bettering himself from designations to whatever it is, taking classes. And it's always, okay, what are you doing to better yourself now?
Yeah.
In the industry, in a personal level, whatever it is, always learn, always try to get more knowledge because it's going to help you, whether that is through your mentor directly or more formal ways of taking classes and whatever it is. And I think if by taking those classes or doing those, you'll actually find mentors as well that you might not have.
Yeah. I mean, listening to fantastic podcasts
That's
is a great way.
Yeah. It's a form of learning.
I really like, seminars. I'll go to like some of the mortgage seminars every year. And it's, just a time to like reflect and spend time with my peers and trade ideas and learn a lot from people who get up on stage and talk, but also just learn a lot by talking to people in the crowd.
Yeah.
Just sitting next to some stranger and asking them about them and their business. And then there's always like the mixers and stuff. And like my network is amazing because of those types of things. So like, put yourself out there, man. It's hard sometimes though. Yeah. But like, if you're looking to answer your question, go back, like how do you bridge that gap? And if you're working from home remotely, right?
Yeah.
Get out and join a networking group. Get out and go to your industry specific conference. Join a coaching program. There's plenty of people out there that will, share knowledge with you.
Yeah. Find a local cohort. If you're working for a company that's way far away, find somebody that's local that you can bounce ideas off of that maybe works for a competitor or whatever. It doesn't matter, but cultivate that knowledge, cultivate those relationships. So.
Love it. Cool.
Awesome.
Well, thanks for joining us on the 10 Key podcast. And if you need anything from us, our contact information is in the show notes, and would love to connect with you and appreciate you listening to the show. Thanks for being here, guys.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.